Boom, we are live, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us this evening. Wow, wonderful ride for Bitcoin so far. Peaking out at around $98,000 and well on its way to 100 grand. We're going to dive in, take a look at some data. We're also going to be looking at one of our fellow Arcane Bear family members' charts that points us in the direction of somewhere around $240,000. So we'll be looking at that at the last, but let's just dive right in. Here's what brought us to this point. It's a little messy because we've added a few smaller drawings, but we'll zoom into that later. For now, what we've been watching is this large cup and handle. The handle finished, and then we saw an explosion in price. Now, I sent a private newsletter out to everybody right around October 18th, and I made a video on October 2nd talking about our directive kind of jump across the point of control here. And what I was doing was I was actually comparing this to gold. So here's gold on this very similar chart pattern. And as you can see, we just moved into SOSs right out the gate. So same with Bitcoin, moved up and out. And I suspect we're on our way to around $120,000 to $130,000 before we see any real big LPS. So this will be the first SOS that we're looking for. So SOS stands for sign of strength in this particular methodology. And then we usually have a decent retracement, something like 30%, where the market operators test to see how much supply the open market can handle at any given moment. So somewhere between 130, come back down to maybe like 100 and test from there. So if we zoom in, we can follow the chart that we've been watching with the Arcane Bear family in our private group as well. We had our primary support come in, the first part of the buying climax, our spring and our test here. Notifiably, again, significant here is the volume signatures from the first primary support to the spring. This is what we had here. A nice LPS came in with a test, limited supply. And then again, this other really important part happened a few days after we left this falling range in the middle of the LPS, which is just this massive amount of liquidity testing where the operators are buying up a huge amount, selling a huge amount, buying up a huge amount, and then selling. And notice here, is if we zoom in, we just made it a little bit higher each time. What they're doing here is checking to make sure that they still have control over the majority of the market during their selling process. This is known as effort versus result in our particular little industry of the Wyckoff analysis. So here we could see again the effort of how much supply came into the market versus the result of both upside and or downside. And the downside was limited while the upside expanded past that limited downside. So that's a really important part to understand. In this smaller range now, we are actually in the SOS of this range. I suspect we will find a little consolidation here. For those of you that are following along, you'll know basically what we'll see is some type of reaccumulation channel that happens right outside of the back of the box, and then we'll probably rip to around $130,000. Now, $100,000 is a very psychologically important area, so I suspect that's going to take some time to get through. Something like maybe the next 2 weeks of accumulation through this SOS before we move too much further forward. So one of the next things I wanted to do was take a look at some of the dominance charts. So here's USDT dominance. Interestingly enough, I had a little idea here I thought was interesting to think about. We've been following this rising channel or this rising support line for USDT dominance. And basically every time the dominance of the USD is going down, it's going into other assets. One of the big things though that's changed now is we have so much more accumulation coming into the market from the ETFs that one of the things we have to do is imagine that because the ETFs is a really easy way to get in and out of the market for USD, the need for USDT is actually going to decrease overall because these funds are just moving massive billions of dollars of amounts into and out of Bitcoin and not ever having to touch USDT. So the long-term chart, I think, of USDT here is inevitably just going to get sucked down and down and down and down, because it's generally for players like us who are considered smaller in comparison to the BlackRocks, the Van Ex, and these massive players of the world who can just have their liquidity move in and out into USD without having to touch USDT. So something interesting to think about there. I thought it was an important little side thought. The next idea here I wanted to take a look at was the the Bitcoin dominance chart. So as you can see, basically since July, the Bitcoin dominance chart has just been onwards and upwards for basically the whole market cycle. I think there's a few reasons we could get into, but Bitcoin is clearly the winner of this game. Now, there are other technologies that will do well over the next decade, but Bitcoin is winning the money game, and that's huge. That's potentially trillions of dollars of capability here, still hidden in the markets, that we have to remember hasn't gone through full-on price discovery yet. So we don't know where it's going to go. The first video I made on YouTube said Bitcoin to $6 million. And I might actually end up being right about that sooner than later, which is an incredible thing to think about, because like 11 years ago or whatever, on the side of the beach when I first said, or sorry, what was this, 2016, so not 11 years ago, but 4, 8, 9, about 9 years ago when I said that on the side of the beach, Bitcoin was $200. So we've come incredibly far since then. One of the next things I want to do is take a look at some of the other charts we were looking at. So for example, Aptos is in a nice, what appears to be reaccumulation range as well. Same with Render. Lots of volatility coming into the market though to retest the middle of the range. Again, I think this is just indicative of the fact that we're about to start a pretty big bull market cycle for most of the assets. That's just how liquidity likes to move. It moves in huge chunks. SUI today had a little bit of a block hiccup, and that liquidity, sometimes it feels like it's timed, like they were just trying to get liquidity out of the market, because it fell down and created what might have been a spring of the trading range that we're actually looking at here. So, if you've been following the charts for a while with me, that often what we'll see springs that drop totally below the market here, come back in, retest, and then break out into their next movement. So it seems like a well-timed spring, that kind of fear around the SUI blockchain kind of stopping, the validators not producing blocks properly. And then again, if we zoom into the 15-minute, you can see we've already had almost a 10% move to the upside, which is huge if you think about it. That's a lot of capital moving into the SUI market. So it seems really well-timed. I just wanted to keep today's video short. I think we're going higher. Oh, actually, right, quick shout out to we'll go over some last few ideas really quickly here. So this is a PNF chart by one of the private Bear family members. This has our LPS targets taking us up as high as $248,000, and the first SOS taking us up to between $115,000 to $140,000. So I feel this is correct. I feel there's a fair amount of alignment with this particular idea that would have us fall in that area without too much trouble to begin with anyways. So it's something important to remember, that what we're looking at within these PNF charts are actually a really great way to keep an eye on the overall markets. I'm a big fan of the PNF charts, although I'm not good at using them. I'm usually a bit better at just following the SOS and LPS strategy. But shout out to Funky for creating this chart. I think he's going to find out in the not too distant future that this is actually pretty damn close to right. The last things I wanted to look at here, just some quick ideas. We are not out of this market yet. So here's the switch over between the long-term and short-term holders. The blue being the short-term, is that correct? Yeah, long-term is blue, short-term is yellow. So as you can see, the short-term holders on the yellow, let's zoom in a little bit here, is increasing. Yellow is increasing, blue is decreasing, but this should be significantly dropping before we see real profit taking in the market. So we're nowhere near the top, just based off the long-term to short-term holder supply distribution. The markets are still mostly long. You got 11.48 billion to the long side, 11.23 billion to the short side. I think being short right now is kind of ridiculous. As we can see in the liquidation heat map too, many times people have tried to short the market here. We had a 92,000, and you're talking hundreds of millions of dollars of people trying to short a bull market. It's just absolute insanity. But on the long side, you can see the majority of the longs here in the robust longs were taken out right around the $70,000, $74,000 area. So we've got a long ways to go. I suspect that this market is just going to continue to pump. I think, again, just for clarification's sake, we'll rip somewhere towards the $115,000 to $130,000 mark, and then we will come back down, form a little LPS between 90, and then we could be going as high as $240,000 within this market cycle. So if the nation states start to buy Bitcoin, if the United States government starts to buy Bitcoin, it's just going to get insane out there. So keep that in mind. Anyway, just quick little updates through the RK Bear. We'll see you guys in the next episode.